Today on CityCast Boise, an Idaho bathroom law for transgender kids is set to go into effect, but how will it affect students, and can it even be enforced? Blake Hunter and I dig into the details and talk about the hidden agenda behind anti-trans bills. Plus, how two cops suing each other isn't great timing for the mayor, and we get excited about the West Valley Humane Society Furball Gala. It's Wednesday, October 18th. I'm Emma Arnold, and this is what Boise is talking about. Hi, Blake.
Good morning, Emma.
Good morning. I loved your piece in the newsletter this week. I just want to start with that. We're not going to get super into it, but I do want people to read it because we are actually doing a deep dive podcast episode about it that I feel like is a good primer for a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about. This GOP infighting, it's hard to keep track of. There's so much going on.
It is. There's so many moving parts. And, of course, just like watching Idaho politics, it's something that we've all been keeping an eye on for several years. And it was just funny as I was researching it. It was like, wow, a year ago we were talking about different issues and different groups and different people, and 2 years ago different people, but it really feels like a lot of the same things. So yeah, raising some interesting questions, and we'll talk about that another time soon.
Yeah, you also talked about, which we do have time to get into right now, some pretty bad news that I think is going to be affecting a lot of people pretty heavily today. The Idaho bathroom law for transgender students that was set to go into effect, and people had some pretty strong hopes that maybe the court would step in here. Yeah. Despite the court's efforts, looks like it's going into effect anyway. That's
right. Yeah. So Senate Bill 1100 was one of several anti-trans bills, and specifically anti-trans youth bills that the Idaho legislature put forth this year. And we've had slates of them every year for the past, 3 years. And so this one is similar to other states in that it's essentially barring any public schools from allowing trans students to use their correct bathroom. And so a lot of people, especially in Idaho, don't know a lot about like transgender people and just issues. And so I think that it's really easy for people to sign on to things that they don't really know a ton about. Not to say that there isn't a lot of like malevolence, but this came from a really small group. This came from the Idaho Family Policy Center, which we've talked about on the podcast a little bit before. So students can actually sue their school, a minimum fine of $5,000. This is what the law says: for each instance that the student encountered a person of the opposite sex, and then it's using a public school restroom, changing facility, locker room, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, there's no pulling punches about it. This is dark. This is not good. This goes into effect mid-November, and the legal challenge for it is still continuing, that several people are putting together, or several groups are putting together, but essentially it was just kind of like a legal processing of like this injunction was put down for now. So it's going to go into effect. And so, again, another barrier for trans Idahoans and especially trans youth for just feeling like active, accepted parts of our society. And it's going to enable bullying, physical abuse, social outcasting. Trans youth have just like such high rates of depression and suicidality. And there's no pretense that this won't make those conditions worse. And the people who wrote this bill knew that. I want to ask you, I already know how we both feel about this, but for somebody who's listening who, like you said, maybe does not really have much of an opinion on trans people, maybe is not super educated, or just maybe it's just kind of like, I have not been paying attention to this. And I could see sort of people being like, well, this doesn't seem like such a big deal. Like, right. Assigning, making sure that kids are using the bathroom they were assigned at birth. Like, that doesn't seem like such a big deal. Can you talk about why this is such a big deal? Like, you mentioned the bullying and the outcasting, but it seems like there are deeper things here that are dangerous. Yeah, there are three things that I want to talk about here. Two kind of a bit more surface level. One is that this is not a problem. Like, there have been no recorded instances in the past few years, or at any that I know of in Idaho history, of altercations in a public bathroom or locker room because someone is trans. That is not, bullying a trans person. Like, I'm sure that there are a lot of situations like that, but it's trans people are being victimized. So that's one. This is a solution in search of a problem. And two, with that comes the question of like fiscal conservatism. And so, this is just one of many, many legal battles that Idaho taxpayers are paying for, that the Idaho legislature has put forth. And I don't have any numbers on hand right now, but that number, the amount of money that is being paid that Idaho taxpayers are putting into the bucket of oppressing trans youth is growing, and it's really bad. And three, kind of getting into those root issues that you mentioned, we live in a society that is just completely inundated with transphobia. And these bills are written by people who do not want trans people to exist. And if they can't, detransition people or prevent them from transitioning in the first place, or just living their life, it doesn't even have to do anything to do with transition, they would rather them die. And they have said that. I should remember off the top of my head the name of the church in Boise, where the pastor just, within the last couple of years has said multiple times, like queer people are deserving of death and they know that. And so I want people to understand, like, this might be a confusing topic to you. This might be a topic that, like, you've seen circulated in a lot of areas. It's a big cultural moment kind of thing. We are talking about the creation of a class of citizens who are being profiled and targeted, harassed and abused, and we know how the cycle of violence ends. And so this is about trying to legislate trans people out of existence, which doesn't work, and so it's going to lead to pushing trans people out of existence.
Yeah. And in addition to all of that, and I do not want to make light of this in any way.
Yeah.
Like, what you're saying is so true and so heavy and so sad. And trans people are such a small population of people, which is why it's easy to go after them. And it's easy to like, if you don't have a huge ally, like a lot of allies at your back, trans people have a very hard time protecting themselves. In addition, it's a dumb and bad law. Like,
yes,
the
it's
idea,
poorly written. Yeah,
it's so poorly written. The law, like, the person who wrote this has not been around teenagers, fingers crossed anyway, because you're going to allow students to sue the school for a minimum of $5,000, a minimum fine.
Yeah.
Of $5,000 for each instant that the student encounters a person of the opposite sex. You're telling me you're giving teenagers the ability to sue for $5,000 because they saw someone. I mean, they're going to be pushing each other into bathrooms and saying,
yes.
suing, I'm
Yeah.
suing. They're going to be making up, like, at the very least, I hope that these kids be little agents of chaos, which Gen Z seems to be fabulous at. God bless them.
Yeah.
But because, like, how are you enforcing this? Also, like, one of the things says, like, on school trips, you have to have a complete separation of the sexes. You can't have any crossover. You can sue for $5,000. I'm like, I was on choir trips where we snuck into each other's rooms. That, like, that used to be called, like, youth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That used to be part of the fun of being young, was like doing stuff like that. Now you can sue if a boy comes into, sneaks in and you guys hang out, your roommate could sue the school for $5,000. Like, just a bad plan and an evil plan also, in my opinion. So
part of this is punishing public schools as well.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to say our producer, Evelyn Avitia, dropped in the notes. The pastor that I was referring to earlier is from the Shield of Faith Baptist Church, Joe Jonas, who went viral from some of his takes. Unfortunately, he is not a lone wolf in Idaho.
No, thank you, Evelyn, for that. Yeah, because people should know about that. They should know that there's a church right there on Cole Road,
right around the corner.
Right around the corner, where they are preaching for the death of all LGBTQ people. So I also want to read this little piece here that I think is so interesting. And stop me if I get too muddy here, but I really think that this is an interesting piece. So the Idaho Family Policy Center, they wrote this bill. So the Idaho Family Policy Center president, Blaine Kanzati, they're thrilled that the federal judge said, that they can't really touch this right now. But he had this quote that just is ringing in my head all, like, for a couple days. All students but especially our girls deserve safety in vulnerable spaces like school bathrooms, changing room, and showers. And I think that that is such an interesting and telling quote. And something I've been recently doing with my sons, I have 3 sons, and after watching the Barbie movie, I bought them all the Bell Hooks book, all about love, which is all about masculine love, one of my favorite books. Yeah. But in it, she talks a lot about how we do not, when we're talking about these issues, we do not point to the patriarchy and say, that's patriarchy, that's what's happening here. But that sentence is the perfect example of how patriarchy harms everybody, is because all students, but especially our girls, deserve safety, especially our girls. That comes from the rooted idea that boys are predators. Right. And I'm going to think like a bigot here for a second, so please bear with me, that a young boy who thinks he is a girl, so a trans woman, a young trans woman, goes into a locker room not to change clothes, but has altered their entire lifestyle, their entire being, deals with all this subjugation and abuse and oppression to prey on young women. That's what they think the end goal. I mean, I think you kind of like these bigots really kind of out themselves.
Absolutely.
When you're like, that's what you would do maybe if you had access to women's bathrooms. Maybe you're outing yourself as that being something you would do. On the flip side, they're not worried about a young trans man, in their eyes, a young woman who thinks that she's a boy. They're not worried about her being in a bathroom because they're not worried about young women preying on young boys.
Right.
And I just think all of that, I'm just going to do what I do with my son. I say, what was that? What causes that? The patriarchy. Okay, well, I want to move on and talk about something else you talked about in the newsletter this week, which is pretty interesting to me because I feel like, the last couple of times we've done Chatter, we've been kind of making fun of Mike Masterson, mayoral candidate Mike Masterson, for some snafus he's had. But this story is something I'm sure Mayor McLean is like, oh, yeah, no, thank you. I don't really want that to come up a month before election. Why don't you fill us in a little?
So this started last week. A police sergeant who's been in the Boise Police Department, I think, for like 19 years, came forward with a tort claim last year and then filed an actual lawsuit this week against the city of Boise and former police chief Ryan Lee. And this goes back to an incident in an internal meeting that happened in the fall of 2021, so fully like 2 years ago this month, in which Ryan Lee, former police chief, demonstrated a neck hold on Kirk Rush that was essentially like this is something you shouldn't do. Allegedly, Rush says that it was done without his permission, that it was humiliating, and then it literally did break his neck. And I am not a physician. I don't know how necks work, really. They kind of freak me out. But this was a very bad situation. And he ended up having to get surgery, which the city paid for. And it landed Lee. Lee was investigated for it. And another county investigator in the state of Idaho essentially said that there was a lot of evidence that showed that this was a really, really bad situation, but eventually decided not to convict him, or to charge him, I should say, with a felony battery. Just a few days later, then Ryan Lee steps in with his own lawsuit against Kirk Rush and a few other people for libel, slander, and campaigning to essentially kick him out of office. And he's seeking $1 million in damages. So it's very much a disagreement on what happened in this situation, in this meeting. And then both of them are also saying that this internal meeting where Kirk Rush was injured was also part of a pattern on both parties' parts. For, Lee has been, accused from many police officers of being bullying, of kind of targeting and, just being really rude and mean to a lot of the police staff. Kirk Rush and other individuals within the department are being accused of, trying to get Lee kicked out of office and for, intentionally spreading false information. So it's these two really big lawsuits that the city's involved in, going back and forth. And so Lee is out of town. He's no longer here. Kirk Rush is still here and on duty. But yeah, so this is a big conversation that it's been going on for 2 years now. And obviously Lee was asked to resign by Mayor McLean last year around this time. But it continues. The story continues.
Yeah, it's interesting timing, all of this, actually, because we finally we have a new director of police accountability.
Right. That's
After
true.
quite a while of not having, after Jesus Yara was let go, and he's also has a tort
Yeah.
filed against the city. So that's interesting. But, Cole McKay is coming in. We're actually talking to her later this week. And I just think that that's all sort of interesting timing, while at the same time, you have Mike Masterson's campaign saying one of the big reasons he decided to run was what he believes to be Mayor McLean's mishandling of the Boise Police Department.
Yeah.
So pretty interesting timing, all of this sort of coming down all at once right before the election.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I'm sure that not a ton will go down before the election because now it's really in court, but we'll stay on top of it for sure.
Yeah. Well, you said you wanted to talk to me. We last Friday, I talked to George Prentice about a mayoral candidate that we've all had some curiosity about, Aaron Reese. But you said you saw him speak and you were kind of intrigued.
Yeah. So I reached out to you to be like, hey, I have a couple clarifying notes from what you and George talked about last week. And I think that it was just that he brought to the table at the City Club of Boise mayoral forum a couple weeks ago a perspective that we just have not seen a lot of be platformed in Boise, and particularly in front of a former police chief, in front of Mayor McLean herself, in front of this huge crowd of donors, other political candidates, etc., said essentially, a lot of things about mutual aid, a lot of things about restorative justice in Boise. He traced a lot of things back to wages. And I think that, he's been very clear, like you and George said, he's been very clear that he's not expecting his candidacy to be successful. He's not expecting to win. He's not really expecting to get any votes. During the forum, he said, if I were to become mayor, and then he just kind of paused and just looked around. He's like, God help us all. So he's got such a sense of humor.
Honestly,
about him.
Love that campaign.
Love it. Yeah. And then, of course, it actually worked really well because then he got this whole crowd of people laughing who, would see him on the street and not really be drawn to him. I'll just say that. But actually, he, mentioned, for example, police shootings, this year, in the last couple years, and saying, we need to have a better conversation about public safety because, Masterson is talking about public safety, and that's a big thing that he's running on. As we've said on the show, we have historically low crime rates right now. And so Reese was saying, I feel like the public generally feels quite safe in Boise. However, having a police department that shot more people in the past couple of years than in a long time doesn't make me feel safe. And he talked about, he called housing markets soulless and cruel, which I thought was an interesting thing to just say right in front of the mayor and in front of a bunch of developers. And honestly, I was kind of like, sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes you need a breath of fresh air to come into the room. And it felt like, as much as I think people were excited to dismiss him as being just completely out there, he brought a bit of reality check. Whether people are going to be willing to listen to him thoroughly enough or not remains to be seen, and I think the answer is probably no. But he just brought up a lot of things that I think we actually do need to have more thorough conversations about in Boise. And of course, like you mentioned last week with George, he's running on bodily autonomy. He talked about abortion rights. He did kind of go back to wages as being one of his biggest things that he wants to talk about. Is when the candidates kept talking about public-private housing partnerships, he was like, that's great. You need to pay people more if they're going to be able to afford any kind of housing. And honestly, that was a bit of a relief. It was nice to have someone saying some of these things that weren't within, this wider umbrella institution thing. And so I just wanted to come on and say, hey, we should actually be listening to what he's saying a little bit more, because it was really nice to just have someone on a mayoral forum say, we need to embolden mutual aid, because you and I have talked about how that is one of the very few things that makes us feel political hope anymore. And so I just wanted to say that, I think we should be listening to him.
I love that. Okay. Now that councilperson Lisa Sanchez is gone, we don't have any renters
I know.
on city council. And it does feel like a lot of the conversations that are starting to happen are around, stuff that I'm like, I'm less concerned with the fact that there's no parks in West Boise, even though that's infuriating, than I am the fact that, our unhoused population is growing and growing, and everyone I know is desperate to find affordable housing.
I
So,
know.
well, I want to end on this fun thing. It's very cute, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to go, but I hope I can make it. But the West Valley Humane Society, who we love so much, they are having an event on October 19th called the Furball, which is a super cute fundraiser that they do kind of in honor. It's the first annual Carly Cantrell West Valley Humane Society fundraiser. And it looks like it's really cute, and you get to see a lot of dogs, and you get to, have dinner and dress up and get fancy. So if you don't have plans on the 19th, I super, super suggest you go. It looks like it's going to be a very cute event. And if you can't go, you can still become a sponsor and sponsor a table or sponsor dogs. Also, I decided that from now on, we're going to be doing a West Valley Pet of the Week on these chatters because it's the only thing keeping me sane right now. My West Valley Pick of the Week is a dog I have been avoiding sending our audio producer, Evelyn, all week. I've been so strong. I want to send her this dog because she mentioned she wants a mini poodle, but she's not ready yet. This dog, so somebody... Look at this dog. Dr. Jekyll is his name.
Dr.
And
Jekyll.
they do this cute thing where they name, whatever holiday's coming up, they name the pets for that. And he is a little miniature poodle. And Blake, he has the saddest little face.
Oh.
He is not having a good time in dog jail. So,
Oh, no.
But he's so sweet. And so he's my pick of the week. Somebody go get Dr. Jekyll. He has the sweetest face.
Yeah.
He clearly is like, get me out of here. And I
Yeah.
bet he would sit on your lap and eat all your little leftovers and just be
What
the
a
best dog.
cutie.
So
You're
so
being a
somebody
real
go,
hero for not sending that to Evelyn. I just want to say.
it's all week. Every time I see him, I think this is the perfect dog for Evelyn. There are, Evelyn, if you're listening here, two mini poodles at the West Valley Humane Society, and they have a bunch of Chihuahuas too. So just like lots of little cute dogs, and of course, lots of huskies, as always. So, but if you can go to the Furball on October 19th, do. And if not, just send some money their way. They're working on a huge expansion right now. They could use the extra donations. Anything you're excited about for this week or this weekend?
I'm really excited about, you had a conversation yesterday about the Boise Fashion Week kicking off this week or this weekend. I'm really sad that I can't go, but it's one of those things where I'm really glad that it exists in Boise. And so I'm excited to look at the clips. I'm headed out of town. I'm going to Yellowstone
Fun.
for a
Perfect
nice
time of year for that.
needed little break. Yeah, it's like one of the last 2 weekends that the park is open, or at least some of the park is open. So it'll be nice to get out of town. But I wish that I could be going to Boise Fashion Week because I'm really glad that it exists. I think that we need more conversations around fashion in Boise. And so I hope that this really helps kick that off.
Yeah, me too. It was so fun. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, it was so fun talking to the designer, Juliana Davidsmeyer. And she has her brand Ritual Blue, but she was so interesting to talk to and made me think how I've never really thought of Boise having a fashion scene.
Yeah, totally.
Really, much before. So yeah, check that out. Check out the Furball and just hang in there, folks.
Yeah, we
hang
got
in
this.
there.
Take care.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the show and want more Blake in your inbox every day, subscribe to our Hey Boise newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more local stories from around the city. Bye. Sorry, I'm going to wait for this plane to go over really fast. Then I'm going to say something so smart.
Great.